Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're going to be talking about proactive HR and making time to be strategic. Let's just spend a few minutes here, just setting the stage, allowing folks to enter and to join us. And, very excited to be speaking with all of you today on this topic. Making time to be strategic is very difficult to do, and we're going to break it down today with hopefully giving you some ideas and opportunities to walk away from today's conversation to start incorporating some of these ideas immediately into your day. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Lauren Winans, and I am the CEO and Principal HR Consultant for Next Level Benefits. We are an HR consulting firm. Prior to starting Next Level Benefits, I was in corporate HR roles for about 20 years. So I know what it's like to be pulled in a variety of different directions, which makes it very difficult to focus on HR strategy, which makes it very difficult to make time in our schedules to be everything to everyone. So I know that firsthand, and I can absolutely empathize with many of you here on today's session. After my 20 years in corporate, I went ahead and started Next Level Benefits about almost 6 years ago now. And it's been a fantastic way to challenge myself and leverage my skill set in a different way. Have a variety of team members now that make up Next Level Benefits, and we're really focused on helping clients of all sizes, all industries, all over the country to accelerate their projects and their initiatives and their goals, as well as to fill in on an interim basis or provide fractional HR support. So if there's anything we can do to help you, don't hesitate to reach out. But today's objective, we're here today to learn how to make time to be strategic. And ways to do that include expanding our mindset, our bandwidth, and our professional network to more effectively deploy our HR strategy. So the emphasis here is on how. So we're not just going to talk about high level, all the things that we know in theory. We're going to actually dig deeper and identify ways how we can do this. How can we incorporate some of these ideas and these strategies into our own day, our week, our month, our year? And how can we be able to kind of take things from what we know in theory, but actually be able to apply it into our actions and what we bring with ourselves to work every day. So we are going to be talking about a lot of information today. Please do not feel like you need to take notes. A recording will be made available to you at the conclusion of the session today. Probably get that out over the next probably 24 hours or so. You'll also be receiving a checklist that covers a lot of the action items and ideas that we're going to be discussing today. And then, lastly, before we kind of kick things off here, do just want to let you know, if you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the Q&A today. We should have some time at the end of the session today for me to take some of those Q&As live and kind of answer some of those questions. I'm also happy to follow up with you directly after the webinar if there is a burning question that you have. Don't hesitate to put your name on that question in the Q&A, and be happy to follow back up with you post webinar here if I don't get a chance to answer that question live. All right, so we're going to dig in. And so what does it mean to be strategic in HR? I think many of you know the answer here, right? And I think like I said, in theory, we know the answer. And here's a few of the things that come to mind when we think about what's the theory behind being strategic in HR. So we know that it requires aligning HR strategies with business objectives. So taking what HR is doing and really finding ways to incorporate that into what the overall organizational goals are. We also know that, using data to make decisions is a great way to kind of get out of the day to day and really kind of, become more strategic and really focus on strategy as opposed to being very tactical. We also know in theory that proactive talent management as well as effective change management are ways to be strategic within HR, as well as partnering with business leaders in various ways, collaborating through challenges and priorities. So we know the answer here, right? When someone asks, what does it mean to be strategic in HR? You're most likely going to answer, provide some of these answers and a variety of others as well. But really what today is about is, how do I do this? How do I take what I know in theory and apply it to my everyday life, as well as my everyday career, and really try to become more strategic in the way that I operate and the way that I carry myself, not only through the role that I currently have, but also be able to contribute at a larger level to the organization as well as within the HR team. So I've kind of narrowed it down on my end here in terms of what I believe are the 4 essential components that you really need to kind of create harmony amongst. So there's tools, there's practices, there's bench strength, and there's initiatives. We are going to go through each one of these categories today, and we're going to talk about the how. We're going to actually, walk through ideas and examples of ways that you can, walk away today and start, creating, more strategic opportunities for yourself as well as for your organization. So these components I find to be very impactful and important. Some of the items that we're going to discuss today, they're certainly not encompassing every single tactic that's out there, but I'm hopefully going to give you a good start to think through things that you can be doing, as well as maybe some specific, more personalized ways that you can start brainstorming on your own that would help you to really kind of be more strategic and make time to be more strategic each day. So all of this kind of goes back to, fostering a strategic mindset. So, all the things that I just showed you previously, these are ways that we're going to, be able to incorporate those that kind of feed that mindset. And that mindset can be hard to be in when you're an HR professional, because you're often tasked with a variety of things coming at you at the same time. You have a lot of tactical work that just needs to be done. That's just the administration of human resources. But there's also, a desire and a need for proactivity to really get ahead of some of the issues, the challenges, the problems that create itself every day. And it's hard to get out of that cycle. So what we're going to be focused on is touching these 4 essential areas to really leverage tools to manage our time, diligently rely on practices to enhance our work, create a talent circle around us, and then also prioritize projects that free up time and improve efficiency. So we're going to kick off with tools, and we're going to talk about some tools that you can incorporate into your day. So these are just a few. I know there's a lot of other ones that you can consider, but hopefully this will help start to think a little bit more about it from your perspective. There are ways that you can create efficiencies within your day. A lot of these tools that I'm mentioning here, they might be versions of project management tools or AI tools. And so I say all of this with the caveat, you definitely want to make sure that your IT teams and your legal teams are supportive of using different types of tools and methods for you to augment your day. That is vitally important. Not all of us will have the ability to use a calendar scheduler, for example, but those that haven't thought about it before and do have the ability to do that within their organization's framework and network, this could be a game changer for you. So using scheduling automation is highly valuable when you're trying to coordinate time with not only internal folks within your organization, but also external when you're meeting with different vendors, consultants, brokers, different types of parties that you might be needing to spend time with. Calendar schedulers can really take the back and forth and the clutter that's in your inbox, really kind of eliminate that. Task and project management tools are also very useful when it comes to kind of itemizing, what are the priorities that I have to get done today? What are the things that must be done? What are the things that I have time to kind of work on a little bit every day, and what are the things that I need to get done immediately? I use Asana. This is not a plug for them by any means, but there's a lot of project management tools that operate just like it, where it really kind of allows you to almost create the checklist that you might have previously written down, your post-it notes that you might have scattered all over your desk. A tool like Asana is a really great one to kind of harness and put everything together. Allows you to keep track of all of the things that you might need to take care of, and it allows you to kind of move it along through the days or the weeks as you need to. It just makes keeping track of all of the different pieces and parts that HR professionals have to worry about, makes it that much easier. I use it in a variety of ways, but one of the ways that I think might be helpful for those joining today, I use it to create like an operations calendar for myself. It helps me to ensure that all of the milestones that I need to hit on a weekly and a monthly basis throughout the year, that I don't have to worry about. I don't have to be setting reminders for myself. All of it is there kind of mapped out in Asana for myself. And I can see that being useful for HR professionals, not only from an operations perspective, but even a compliance calendar of sorts can be very helpful to remind you to handle certain aspects of the tactical work that needs to be done all of the time. Meeting note taker. I know that some IT groups love them, some IT groups hate them, but if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend that you do. It makes staying present in the moment so much easier. You can stay present in that meeting and actually have a dialogue with someone else, and really not feel like you're rushing to write down notes or scribble something, and then later you find out you don't even know what you wrote down. The meeting note takers are worth their weight in gold, especially if they're permitted for your use within your organization's network. Process documentation. I have always had trouble with this. I often like to keep the process in my head first for whatever reason. And so really trying to force yourself to really document a process so that you can actually ask for help and get it and hand over, hey, here's the process. I can delegate this to you, and here's exactly what you need to do. Scribe is a great resource, but there's lots of other tools out there as well where you can simplify that documentation of your HR processes by automating different aspects of the creation of creating a guide or creating a checklist. Tools like this can be very, very helpful when you're looking to delegate to team members or are looking for a backup when you're out of the office. And then lastly here, a text summarizer. So many of us have to read so much, as it might be documents, it might be different sorts of case studies and white papers. Anytime that you can kind of summarize that information into digestible pieces that don't necessarily that help you save time and don't necessarily take up much of your day can be very helpful. These tools I'm kind of just recommending as examples here to incorporate into your day. This helps to kind of minimize the tasks and the tactical noise that's in your day. And if we can minimize some of that noise and that disorganization and that, oh my gosh, I forgot about this, and the scramble, if we can reduce that, we make more space and time for ourselves to be strategic. So the tools can really be powerful. Like I said, these are just a few. I'm sure you have many others that might come to mind, and I highly recommend that you do, research into, these types of tools as well as anything that you might come up with. It can be very powerful to reduce the noise. It allows you to repurpose your time in other ways. And speaking of, let's talk a little bit about getting out of our own way and focusing on practices to incorporate into our week. Practices that are going to help us to break down hurdles and barriers to us being successful and getting work done with an efficient pace. So the first here is to chunk and block your time. So what I mean by that is And I've actually been doing this now for probably about 4 years, and it is incredibly helpful for me. Everyone's minds work differently, so this might not work for everyone, but chunking and blocking your time can be really powerful. What this means is, scheduling and dedicating specific blocks of time to focus on particular tasks or activities without interruption. I am notorious for getting distracted and then trying to work on 2 or 3 things at the same time. I often have multiple windows open. I have documents that I might be in the process of typing out or editing. I have, different things that are going on one screen versus another. Chunking and blocking your time allows you to narrow that focus. It allows you to prioritize what's important, and it allows you to get deeper into the work, as opposed to kind of doing a little bit here and there and feeling like multitasking is somehow working for you, because often it's not. We're going to actually look at an example of chunking and blocking your time in just a few minutes, so that you can really see what that looks like. The next one here is to prioritize. I like to think about arranging items and activities in order of urgency. I think that, many of us believe that we do that really well, right? But I think what some of us often do too is we get lost in the things that we like to do, and we don't necessarily always focus on the things that need to be done. And so that, I think, that distinction, and the more self-aware you can be with that distinction, the better. And so, think of yourself as a doctor, and you've got to establish the importance or the urgency of the different actions that you need to take care of, like, the welfare of the patient. So, when you think about your patients, they're going to be your employees, right? The organization that you're serving. And so you really kind of have to triage in the moment. Okay, what needs to be done right now? What is something that is, needs to be such a high priority above anything else that I do today? How can I, successfully tackle something that's going to be a benefit to my patient, to the business, to the employees? So, if you kind of run that scenario through your head, that can often help you to prioritize. We're going to talk a little bit more about prioritizing projects, whether they be high priority or back burner. We're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. So we'll definitely go into that deeper. Delegate. Not all of us do that well, but delegating and really forcing yourself to kind of look at what's on your plate and what you could potentially get help with, through your bench. We're going to talk a little bit about bench strength here, and a little bit too, to kind of add a little more color to the delegation aspect of these practices that we can be incorporating into our week. And then also, automating administrative tasks, hosting brainstorming sessions, creating working teams. These are all things that can help you, get more time out of your day. So, for example, automating administrative tasks. So we can use technology to streamline things, some manual processes, data entry. All of those sorts of things can kind of be streamlined and automated. You just have to find the time to really think through how to do those. Once that starts to become second nature to you, and you're incorporating those practices into your week, it really does free up time for you to be focused on more strategic like tasks. And, examples here as it relates to hosting brainstorming sessions and creating working teams. This is a way to kind of collaborate with maybe your immediate, core group of team members that might be, maybe the people you interact with most, and really just try to, work together to generate ideas and solutions for specific problems that are zapping your time, that are really taking a lot of time out of your week. It's been hard to maybe get ahead of it, but if you really put that time on the calendar to have a brainstorming session with the business partners that you work most often with, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be able to come up with a solution and kind of, instead of putting the Band-Aid on something, really kind of solve it, to allow yourself to free up more time. Creating working teams, very similar concept, but ultimately when you're bringing together a group of individuals, whether they be internal or external or both, you're really, the goal here is to collaborate and to leverage each other's strengths and weaknesses to ultimately identify common goals and figure out how you can work towards them together. I think a lot of us think that we're kind of, alone and in a silo when it comes to some of the different aspects of our roles and the work that we need to get done. But oftentimes we do have an ability to kind of leverage others, whether it be looking for their advice and their guidance and their ideas, or whether it be even creating a working team where you can work together to get to the end or the conclusion of a project, or even of an issue faster, because more minds are better than one, right? All right, so as I promised here, we're going to talk look at this example here as it relates to chunk and blocking. So this is an example of what this could look like. So we've got a Monday through Friday scenario here. You can see where we've got, in orange, the manage my time, daily strategies. So, I'm going to come into work and I'm going to be ready to sit down at my desk at 8:30, and I am going to be focused on managing my time. What are my daily strategies going to be? So I'm going to dedicate 30 minutes to sitting there and identifying which tools do I have the right tools in place? And if I've already created my project management dashboard in Asana, maybe I bring that up. I take a look at what I've got to accomplish that day. I might even take a quick glance at my emails to see if any fires are burning that require my attention, and I identify exactly how I'm going to tackle my day. And then you then take a look at the rest of the schedule here. You're essentially blocking out 30 minutes here, an hour there, a couple hours here, to really focus on different aspects of your workday, so that you're not constantly responding to emails in between meetings throughout the day. You're dedicating an actual chunk of time to spend focused on that task, to dive deep into it, and to hopefully resolve a lot of the things that show up in your inbox, for example. Also, keeping your calendar open to have meetings with whether it be internal or external parties is vitally important, because you need to be available to those business partners and employees who might need you. But you can also block areas of your schedule to actually work on strategic projects as well, and maybe even execute some tasks. You definitely want to find the right mix for you, but this is just an example of how a chunk and block schedule can really help you focus and stay really in tune to the work that you're doing, as opposed to just letting things come at you throughout the day. This allows you to take more control over your time and your schedule, so that you can really be productive and successful in a way that matches what is important to you, as well as it allows and creates boundaries across your schedule. I know from personal experience working in organizations and corporate environments, that you don't always have control over every moment in your schedule. So I recognize that in sometimes it might not be possible. You have to react to what's coming at you and what's going on in the business. But anytime you have an opportunity to chunk and block, I highly recommend that you do. You will find you get through a lot of work a lot faster, and you do feel more confident in the depth and the level of quality and value that you put into your work product. So it can be a game changer for a lot of people. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit more about bench strength. So bench strength, I think a lot of us think about bench strength in terms of, okay, well, who's going to back me up if I'm on vacation, or who on my team could take this over if I, need to be in an all-day meeting, or, you're really thinking about, if I'm not available, who can help out? That is bench strength. But there's a lot of other things that you can think of in terms of bench strength and how to incorporate that into each month, right? So here's just a few ideas, just a few. There's probably a whole lot others, but existing vendors. Many of us interact with a variety of HR vendors, maybe compensation, maybe benefits, maybe org development, maybe talent acquisition, a variety of different vendors that we interact with on a regular basis. I highly recommend leveraging them as much as you possibly can. Take a look at the contracts that you have in place with them, revisit those service level agreements that you have, reallocate work to them and create more division of duties. If you see that there's an opportunity for them to be taking something on that you're currently struggling with, or you have on your plate that's taking up a lot of your time and effort and energy and gets in your way of being strategic, leverage those vendors to really kind of take that on. We had a client recently who was in a similar situation where they had someone on the team who was maybe just handling a little too much. And ultimately, when they spoke with one of their vendors, had identified that in their existing contract, the vendor had already carved out, 5 hours per month that was supposed to be dedicated, to kind of helping. It was more related to some systems that they were using. So it was really about kind of crafting and creating different sorts of customizations as it related to system modules. And so that this organization was able to kind of farm out 5 hours of work to this vendor to triage and update different aspects of their systems without the internal employee needing to take that on. So it allowed them to repurpose their time in a different way and just made things a whole lot easier. So the vendor got to deliver on the contract and the service that they were agreeing to provide, and the employee was able to free up their time and focus on other projects. So, that's just a simple example. There's a lot of other ways to kind of slice and dice that. So I highly recommend that you take a look into that. Consultants and fractional support, similar to what we do. There's a lot of firms out there in addition to ours. So I can speak to ours and how we kind of help different clients. But ideally, you identify a go-to partner that you can kind of rely on to help give you some extra bandwidth. So what that can look like is if you have an HR project that has come up unexpectedly, or maybe you have a project that you've just been delaying and putting off because maybe you don't have the time, or you don't have the internal expertise. Maybe you can get it done, but you just don't have the time to kind of teach yourself and navigate through the whole process. That's a great way or a great opportunity to bring in an independent consultant or some fractional support through a vendor that you trust, and really kind of carve out some of those special projects. Maybe even obtain some interim support, or maybe even leverage them on an ongoing basis to carve out whole pieces to that partner to kind of manage. I can give you a few examples of how we particularly partner with clients. One is from a fractional standpoint. We have a client that we handle all of their employee relations and investigations. It frees up their HR business partners to focus on more strategy and more collaboration with leadership. It allows employees to feel very confident reaching out to a member of the team, but who is also a third party. They feel more confident in sharing information. We document all of those things, and we help to reach resolution on some of the investigations that are conducted. And it ultimately is a win-win on both sides. From an interim perspective, sometimes you have roles that are open due to turnover, or maybe even extended leaves of absence. Identifying a partner that you can rely on to come in on an interim basis whenever maybe one of your team members is going to have a baby and be out on an extended maternity or paternity leave. You don't want that new parent to come back into work stressed and crazed because they have so much work to catch up on. If you have a partner like a consulting firm or a fractional support partner to kind of come in and manage, keep the wheels on the bus while that person's out on leave, or maybe while that role is open and you're looking to hire that perfect candidate, it can really help not only help you in the interim during that period of time when you're down a team member, but also help that new person or the employee who's coming back from leave, really help them to set themselves up on the right foot when they come back into the business. So there's lots of different ways that you can kind of slice and dice it, but I highly recommend in your bench strength, not just having some internal folks that you can rely on, but thinking about who those external go-to resources are going to be as well. Also, self-service tools. we use them every day, right? We've deployed them in our organizations. Definitely take a look at those on an annual basis and see maybe there's different tools and platforms that could be leveraged in different ways. Make sure you're fully deploying these platforms in a way that allows employees to not only update their address and submit name changes, but they can also make changes to direct deposit and enroll into benefits or make changes to their benefits as allowed throughout the year. These are things that can save you some time, frees you up to be more strategic, frees you up to be focused on strategy, and allows you to kind of remove yourself from some of these tactical tasks that employees can kind of take on their own. Also, too, thinking about paid or unpaid internships, as well as identifying employees across your existing organization who might really, really want those stretch goals, be hungry for special projects. Having an idea of who those folks are, and getting buy-in within your organization that it's okay to kind of leverage different folks in different areas of the organization, that can be hugely important for an employee's career development. So a lot of opportunities there to allow not only existing employees to have an opportunity to take on maybe a project that has been, you've been really stretched with or stressed with. Also, they're going to be eager to learn. It's a great opportunity for them. It's a great opportunity for you to delegate and not have to focus on the doing. Of course, we know within HR, not everything can be farmed out. Not everything, there's lots of different things that are sensitive in nature, but there are opportunities that you can identify for folks that you can maybe pull in from another area of the organization. Someone who might be very interested in HR, but hasn't had the opportunity to have that experience yet. And then from an internship perspective, there are a lot of, college graduates who come out of school not necessarily having their first job lined up. That's more common than not these days. So if you don't already have an internship program, or at least have started to think or talk about maybe leveraging interns in that way, this could be a really great opportunity for you to kind of align your needs with opportunities for bringing in, either recent college graduates or students that are still maybe in their sophomore, junior, senior years. Could be a great opportunity to kind of bring those folks in. You get extra hands, and you ultimately get the benefit of helping them to kind of deepen their expertise and their experience and really kind of understand what it's like to work in HR. And you're probably wondering why additional headcount is last here in terms of bench strength. But, I only put it there because I am an HR professional at heart, and I know what it's like to try to get headcount within HR. It's really hard, right? And so, if you do find that you're in a place where you kind of exhausted all of these other resources and you really do need that additional headcount, or you've been blessed with the opportunity to obtain additional headcount, absolutely, take advantage of that. But certainly if you are in need and none of these other, options are really going to work for you, I would definitely, definitely focus on identifying that need before it becomes a problem, before that situation becomes dire, before burnout becomes a problem and an issue for you. All right, now we're going to get into the meat of the strategy piece of this. All right, so we talked about tools, we talked about practices, we talked about bench strength. All of those tactics and ideas and ways of doing things can help free up your time. It can help you to more clearly identify your priorities. It can also, help you to delegate and not feel like you're that person that everyone goes to and everyone's kind of throwing everything at. Now that you've kind of, identified maybe some areas that might be helpful to incorporate into your day, your month, your day, your week, your month. Now start thinking about prioritizing projects that matter and thinking about how to incorporate some of these initiatives into your annual HR strategy. So when we talk about an HR strategy, I think everyone has a different viewpoint of what's the difference between strategy, initiatives, projects. I mean, really, they're all the same when it comes down to it. We use those words interchangeably. But when we think about high impact initiatives, we really want our HR strategy to encompass the work that we need to accomplish during a particular year that is going to move the department further or move the organization further, or establish processes and practices that over time, from a long-term perspective, will result in efficiency, productivity, and essentially supporting the goals of the organization. So when we are developing an HR strategy, while one of the, one of the projects that you might want to work on is focused on, let's say, drafting your SOPs and having, all of your processes documented. I know that's probably like the worst example because I know we all hate that, right? But let's just say that SOP creation is vitally important to you, and you have it listed as part of your annual HR strategy. Think of it as, that really is going to help you move the department forward, but is it really going to contribute to the organization as a whole? So that's, I think, what we really kind of have to clarify here is really, HR strategy is about moving the department and the organization forward, and also being able to contribute at a very high level to the success of the company that you are supporting. So SOPs might be a task or maybe a project that you take on your own. It's not going to be, the biggest piece of your strategy. So when I think about high impact initiatives, I'm thinking about things that are definitely going to improve retention, enrich employee engagement, definitely improve efficiency. So when you're developing a strategy, you can think of it in certain tiers and create subcategories within your list of initiatives. So let's say you start with a list of 5 different initiatives. You might have various, maybe 3 to 5 different subcategories within each initiative. And then ultimately, you can use some industry best practices to help you identify opportunities and areas in which you can kind of fill in those gaps, fill in those subcategories that ultimately, support your overall initiative. So, for example, when you're thinking about best practices, I follow a lot of HR trends that are out there in various publications. I also kind of stay in tune with what's going on just in the workforce in general, what's going on with the economy. These are ways that you can see what's coming, which will help you to identify opportunities for your own organization, so that, one of your HR strategies might be more focused on, we are going to reduce our retention rate. We're going to increase our retention rate and reduce our turnover rate by 5 percentage points. Really, when you start adding real, like, objective, real targets to these initiatives, you're ultimately going to be able to measure your success, and you're ultimately going to be able to kind of figure out which subcategories are going to also contribute to that initiative. And the reason why I kind of talk through this a little bit in more depth in terms of how to kind of organize it is you are not solely responsible for that initiative. You need to look across your team, across your bench, to identify who can help you with some of those subcategory tasks and projects that lead to the achievement of a larger initiative, a high impact initiative, like increasing retention and reducing turnover. That's a huge initiative and should be one that is, on the radar every year. But in some cases, particularly now and across various industries, there's a lot of high turn. And so there's an opportunity to bring in different areas of your internal team as well as your external partners, so that you're all marching forward in a way that you're working together collaboratively, so that everyone is on the same page, kind of working towards the same goal, so that you don't feel saddled with all of it. You're partnering with others to kind of work through it. So the subcategories is incredibly important, and really kind of helping you get there using industry best practices is fantastic. One thing I highly recommend doing, if you don't already do this, schedule annual strategy sessions for you and your team. So that might be, anywhere between 1 and 3 days of just brainstorming sessions, where you can sit down, discuss, maybe do some research together, kind of outline what you want your initiatives to be and what those subcategories should be. And then you can kind of, take a break from the team atmosphere and everyone kind of work on a little bit, work on it individually, come back together as a group and recalibrate to really finalize what that annual strategy looks like. When you work together amongst your colleagues and team members, including executive leadership, you're going to get buy-in from different parties and different areas of the organization that are going to help you to ultimately accelerate and achieve those strategies, those initiatives that you identify. Obtaining that alignment from leadership is incredibly important. HR has a seat at the table in many organizations, but sometimes they don't. And so it's very important that if you are looking to move mountains and you're looking for high impact initiatives, you've got to have leadership alignment and support. You definitely don't want to get too far down the path and find out that leadership isn't necessarily supportive of some of the actions or the direction that you're taking. And then also alerting your cross-functional partners in advance. So let's say you establish your HR strategy with your team within a couple of months' time. You have a couple of back and forths. You've got your high impact initiatives that make up your overall strategy. You've also got your subcategories under each initiative. If you go through that and you identify, okay, I'm going to need to work with legal this year, I'm going to need to work with IT, I'm also going to need to work with the marketing team because we're going to revamp all of our onboarding materials. I'm going to need to also partner with accounting because we're going to restructure some of our cost center and our budget. Identifying who those partners are and alerting them in advance that you have an initiative and a project that's important to you, that you're going to be focusing on it from this month to this month, and that you need at least 3 meetings with them over the course of that time period. Alerting them well in advance, as much as advance notice as you can give them, is going to allow them to work that into their schedule and hopefully eliminate the barriers and the hurdles that comes with scheduling and working with someone who might be pulled in multiple directions. So anytime you can get ahead of that, it's going to be such a better situation. It's not necessarily going to remove every single hurdle, but it's going to help quite a bit. And then I just want to revisit, identifying what is a priority versus maybe what is a back burner project. So we talked about the difference between, high impact initiatives, what the subcategory work that kind of funnels and feeds into that. Not everything that we want to accomplish is a priority. And not everything that we have sitting on the back burner should really be on the back burner. It might need to be a priority. And so, here's some questions that you can be asking yourself when you're trying to distinguish between, is this something that I should incorporate into my HR strategy? Or is this something that can sit on the back burner that when I get to it, it's okay. I'll get to it when I get to it. And so, here's some of those questions. If you answer yes to 2 or more of these questions, you might want to consider that it could be a priority. So, does this support our overall organizational goals? Will this improve or contribute to retention? Will efficiency be an outcome? Will this help to attract new talent? Will this enrich our employees and leaders? So if you answer yes to 2 or more of these questions when you're thinking about a particular project or initiative, then it probably is something that should be more of a priority and less of a back burner. If you are thinking about something and you're not really answering yes to any of these questions, it might not be something that needs to be done urgently. So, incorporating these types of checkpoints and tools for yourself that helps you kind of make these decisions can definitely be helpful. It can also help to frame conversations with your colleagues and your supervisors and your boss and the CHRO. Sometimes something gets put on our plate that doesn't seem all that urgent, but for some reason has a lot of urgency around it. Questions like these that can be asked, if you feel like it can be asked, in a collaborative environment to really talk through the need and the importance or the sense of urgency that is wrapped around a project. This can be very helpful. I've been in situations where I've had bosses in my past who have definitely thought that, this particular project was a much higher priority than maybe something else that I was working on. And I think through conversation and understanding and trying to ultimately get to the root of some of these questions, we were able to identify that, okay, maybe that isn't as urgent as we think it is. And that is something that can wait until Q4 for us to tackle, or that is something that we can delegate to one of our junior analysts to kind of manage, or maybe that's something I can leverage one of our vendors to take care of. So, those types of conversations can always be tricky. So if you can bring something like this with you as a way to kind of navigate those conversations and help kind of stick to the facts, it can definitely be helpful to help you really narrow down and really, get to the heart of your own HR strategy and what's your priorities over the course of the year. I'm going to give you another example of a chunk and block, because as I think you've realized so far, I really like them. Really like a chunk and block schedule. So this is just basically the same schedule that we looked at before, but if you see the darker orange colored boxes that have a star in them, this is just us taking that chunk and block schedule that we looked at previously and incorporating some more of our strategic project work that we've identified as priorities. I've thrown SOP creation on there and some L&D work, and this is just ways that you can adjust your schedule so that you can dive deep into some of these strategic projects, because sometimes that's the hardest part, right? We've created this great strategy. We know all of the different steps and pieces and parts of the work that needs to get us to accomplish that initiative, and accomplish our overall strategy as an HR department and as an organization. But how do we make sure that we get all the day-to-day stuff done and also chip away slowly but surely at our strategic project work that we're working on? So the chunk and block can come into kind of save the day when you really map it out and really block off that time, if you can, to kind of make it happen. All right, so we're just going to summarize here with some key takeaways, and we're going to get to some Q&A. So key takeaways: leverage tools to manage your time. It will, free up your bandwidth and make it easier for you to make time for strategy. Diligently rely on practices that enhance your work. So if something is, creating a better worked product, or resulting in more time in your schedule, or allowing you to stay more present in meetings that you're interacting with, your internal team or even your external partners, continue doing those things and find ways of relying on them, pretty consistently, because it's important to create consistency in order for it to become a habit and something that is just a non-negotiable for each day and each week that you're putting forth within your career. Create a talent circle around you to flex your bandwidth. So, have existing vendors on the ready to kind of take things over or manage things on your behalf. And leverage, external independent consultants and firms that are offering fractional support and interim support. Also, if you can have, interns, incorporate that into, your talent circle. Think about different employees across your business who might be interested in helping with HR projects. So many different ways for you to find ways to increase your bench strength besides just, who's going to back me up when I'm on vacation. And also, prioritize projects that free up time and improve efficiency. So when you're creating that HR strategy each year, and you're thinking about these different high impact initiatives, and you're thinking about what different steps it's going to take to achieve those initiatives, absolutely prioritize projects that free up the time and improve efficiency, not only for yourself and your team, but for business partners and for employees. It's incredibly important to know the difference between a priority and a back burner project, because it will help you to get more clear on what the difference is between strategy and a tactical task. And so, as I mentioned before, from a post-webinar perspective here, you are going to receive the session recording from today, as well as access to a download. It'll be a checklist of pretty much everything we covered today. And it will allow you the opportunity to kind of, go through the list and identify things that might work for you, and maybe even help jumpstart some ideas that might be impactful for you to incorporate, that really speaks to your organization and the way you like to work. So that checklist will also be made available to you. All right. Well, we've got 10 minutes left. And so I would love to take a look here at the Q&A and see some questions that we might have. Looks like we've got one here. Let's see here. What if you don't have anyone to delegate to, coming from a department of one? Great question. And, I think I'm certain that, some of the things we talked about might have helped here, but I'm just going to reiterate because, I've had people in my past to delegate to, and I still have struggled with that. So I think it's very important to make sure you flex that muscle, even if you're a department of one. So think about your existing vendors. Think about anyone that you might be able to leverage across your organization that might be interested in a special project or a stretch goal. There are a lot of folks that are, early in their career who are very interested in making an impact, and even outside of what their initial scope is. Don't discount those folks. Those folks are, they're there for a reason. They're interested. They're excited to be part of your organization, and to give them career development opportunities across different cross-functional departments. I mean, you could create loyalty for life, through a program like that, or through thinking through how that could work. It's something that I think a lot of us don't often think of. I think we think about career paths, right, for each position in an organization, but we don't often think of, hey, who can help HR whenever HR needs help. So would highly recommend that you think about not only existing vendors and folks within your organization who might want the opportunity just to work on some projects, but also leveraging external parties like consulting firms, fractional support, interim support. And then also too, internships can be a great way to, get some of that tasky stuff off your plate. Could be very helpful. Let's see, we got another question here. Oh, while we're talking about interns, can you give some general examples of what an HR intern would do other than filling paperwork? I'm also a department of one who'll be getting their first intern this summer. Congrats. Love a good intern. What I would probably suggest is kind of getting to know who they are and where their strengths lie. You might find that your intern is, secretly a journalist by night and is a fantastic, writer. And maybe you have some, employee communications that could use dusted off a little bit, right? Maybe they could help to draft some pieces for you that you can create templates out of. There could be things where you have them review all your existing documentation and, make notes in the margin of different things that they didn't understand, or, might be helpful to include or exclude. Sometimes just having another set of eyes on something, even if they don't know what some of these things mean, can help add clarity. Maybe there's a section of the handbook that needs more description or more examples, and someone like an intern who's looking at it for the first time might be able to be someone who can give you that, that objective eye that we don't always have because we're in the minutia regularly. Paperwork's always a good thing, right? Data entry is always, helpful, as well as, taking a look at the things that you want to accomplish. Some of those things, we talked about priority versus back burner. Some of those back burner projects, they might not require, a lot of effort, and there might be some research involved, but that's going to be exciting for an intern to kind of take on. Allow them the opportunity to do some research on something and maybe bring it back to you, and then you can kind of guide them from there. So maybe you don't give them everything all at once, but you kind of guide them through phases of, all right, I've got some back burner projects. They're not, super important. They're things I know I'm going to have to get done at some point. And, really try to, help the intern along by, okay, this phase, we're going to research. And all I want you to do is research this topic and bring back all of the ideas and the sources of where you found it. All right, now once we see all of these ideas and these sources and this research, okay, now we're going to work together. All right, these three things, this is the path I want you to take. And I want you to, do X, Y, Z with them. So those are the types of things that you can kind of, allow them the opportunity to take on for you without giving up full control and without, wasting anyone's time, including your own. So hopefully I've given you some good ideas. All right, let's see here. I'll answer that one. This is a question for me. What made you decide to leave your corporate role and how did you know it was time? For me, I got to a place where I felt like I was doing the exact same thing over and over every year without a lot of variation. I was also in a situation where I did feel like the values and the mission of the organization were going in a direction that was very hard for me to stay aligned with. And so ultimately I made the decision to resign, and, I gave my 2 weeks notice and everyone's like, where are you going? And, home. So, I was in a very fortunate place to be able to take a little bit of time off. And during that time, knew that I wanted to start a business, but didn't really know what it would look like. Ultimately, I didn't want to throw away 20 years of HR, but I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, was able to kind of marry the two together. And for me, I knew it was time when it became very difficult to feel like I was adding value. It felt like the work I was doing was just a churn. It wasn't adding value to the organization. It felt like, it wasn't enough value being added to the employees. I was ready for a challenge and a change, and to leverage my expertise, 20 years of it, in a different way. So thank you so much for the question. Always happy to answer that one. There might be many of you on the call today that might be interested someday doing some independent HR consulting. And, I do recommend it if you're at that place in your career. It could be a great way to help multiple organizations achieve their goals. Let's see here. Any additional, are there any additional suggestions tailored to how to be more strategic when you find yourself spending more time putting out fires versus being strategic and additional resources are not currently available? This is a hard one, and sometimes you are just in a situation, and it could be a moment in time, or it could just be the time that you're at this organization. It could just be the company, the way that they are run. But sometimes you're handcuffed and there isn't a lot you can do. But what I would recommend is, not only taking a look at some of the ideas we've come up with today, but if you do have, maybe some HR colleagues that maybe not internal, maybe they work at a variety of different organizations, maybe some former, HR colleagues that you've worked with in the past, or, friends of friends, maybe getting, a group of those folks together and just kind of brainstorming some ideas together. Maybe it's grabbing 30 minutes, or maybe, taking a small group out to dinner and just being like, listen, guys, I'm really struggling. I put out fires all day long. I have no time to be strategic. I'm struggling because there isn't money for additional resources. There isn't anyone to delegate to. Sometimes it takes someone else's eyes and someone else's guidance and advice to kind of open your mind up to the possibilities and kind of breaking through some of these barriers. It also sometimes takes objective third parties to help you identify if maybe the problem will not solve itself at your current company, and perhaps it's time to look. So I do recommend that if you feel like, maybe some of these ideas that we talked about today just really aren't applicable to you in your particular situation, get some advice and guidance from some of the folks that are, near and dear to you. You never know what they come up with. And sometimes it's the best way to kind of maybe see something that it's really hard for you to see on your own. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I wish I could answer a few more, but we're here at time. And I want to make sure that you get the information that you need for the credits that you've earned today through today's session. You'll see that the activity ID for your SHRM PDC is 25-YPYCQ. Go ahead and take that here off the screen today, or feel free to grab it from the follow-up email that we'll be sending out within the next day or two. My contact information is here. We've got our website as well as our general inbox. You can follow us on LinkedIn, also on YouTube. We would love to hear from you, and we hope that you enjoyed this session and that you will be ready to join us for the next one. We're probably going to be doing one in the next month or two. So make sure you join our mailing list so we can keep you posted. Thank you all for your time. Really appreciate it. And good luck to you. And I hope that we hear from you soon.